Hey everyone, and welcome to the Lyme Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tom Moorcroft, and tonight we are joined by just an amazing friend of mine, an incredible doctor, and an inspiring healer, Dr. Jill Crista. I think most people I know her as one of the world's foremost mold experts and mold recovery experts, but she's written the book Break the Mold, as well as she's a pandas expert, and so she's written A Light in the Dark for Pans and Pandas. And these are two really pivotal books because they give a ton of information for providers as well as for patients and caregivers. And tonight we're really going to be exploring, really deeply how to heal. We'll focus a bit on mold and how it impacts your brain, your immune system, some of the questions about testing and treatment, probably touch on pans and pandas a little bit, and then we're going to really dive into a bit of the spirituality of healing. So I'm going to go grab Dr. Jill here, and really excited to have her join us here. So Dr. Jill Crista, what's up?
Hey! Yo.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you joining us. Thanks for taking the time to do this. And, intros to me are always funny because I'm like, what should I say about this person I could talk about for like 3 days without even looking at anything? I'm like, how do I be short? But, many people listening may know who you are, many may not. But I always like to just find out a little bit about your story. Because, you and I have talked a bunch about all kinds of things. We find we have so much in common. So, what started all of this for you? Like, what got you into naturopathic medicine and going down this road of becoming one of like the most well-known mold experts on the face of probably the universe, if not at least the globe? So.
There we go, the universe. Yeah, I mean, naturopathic medicine found me. It was a calling for certain. I was working in Wisconsin at a hippie bike ski shop, deli, and the owner was a master herbalist. And it was just the perfect combination, of like all my outdoor interests and healthy food. And, we'd have people walk in that crashed on their bike and she'd make them a poultice with all of her herbs. She'd go pull them off the shelf. And now, I kind of have my own little like shelf of playground right there. The same thing. And that was from Anita. She taught me. So that's where I feel like it was that moment where I was making sandwiches, healthy deli sandwiches, and somebody came in kind of after hours after our herbalist had left, and she came in with her husband who apparently had just been diagnosed with liver cancer. And she says, "What should my husband take of these herbs for his liver cancer?" And I thought, well, first of all, don't ask me. I'm making sandwiches. I'm a college student. I have no idea. At the time, I was in business school, and I thought, wow, that's amazing that there are other ways to do this. And I had a family that, we were pretty punchy hippie anyway, but I thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to become a doctor who actually knew about that? And I mentioned it to her the next day, and she ran in the back all excited and brought this huge 3-ring binder. It was just like the movies. Like, she sets down this dusty binder. It's like, whoom. And then she said, you can go to school for this. There are schools for this. And I opened it up, and it's just like how you do the I Ching or, those new things. You open to a page and you take the message. I opened it up, and our family friend's herb business ad was on a page. And she had taken all these magazine clippings and clippings from herb books and whatever. And the ad from the school I ended up going to was right on the same page. And it was just like, hey, Jill, hear this, like this is the thing. So it really found me. It was really I could almost hear the orchestra in the background of this movie scene of just like, whoa, that's Daniel's herb company. I know them. And then boom, here's this ad for a school. And the ad was listing the 6 principles that govern the medicine, the 6 philosophies. And then it just said naturopathic, school. And I was like, it was National College at that time, National College of Naturopathic Medicine. I was like, I looked at her and I was like, I think I'm going to be a doctor. And that was it. That's how I found it.
How rad is that?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of what you and I talk about with healing is these things aren't really coincidental, right? I mean, when you ask for it, you will receive it. Sometimes it just looks a little the packaging is a little different. So, and we're going to dive into that for sure. That's one of the things that Jill and I have been talking about, because all of our conversations boil down to love and healing naturally through our spiritual, awakening almost, or like shining our light. So that's really awesome. It's like, and for me, it was like, I just knew I got into medicine through getting injured on a wilderness trip. All I wanted to do is play outside. There was poor leadership, and I was like, you shouldn't get hurt the way I got hurt, because it was a practical joke. And so, yeah, it was pretty crazy. But what was really cool about it was I learned about wilderness medicine, and it was like, prepare and prevent with knowledge and preparation, and then if something happened, learn what to do. And I just got bit, and I was like, this is great. And I just kept going and going, and every step I needed more. I need more experience and learn more. And then I was like, I'm going to go to medical school. And I'm like, well, I hear there's DOs and MDs. I didn't know about naturopaths at the time. And so I was just like, it's all the same thing I thought at the time. I didn't know, right? Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to go where it feels best, and where the few minutes I have in my life to go play outside, it's easy. So I was looking at the University of Vermont, where I went, or the University of New England College of Osteopathic Medicine, and boom, there we were. And I went there, and it's crazy. Like, I walk in, and one of the first people I met is now my wife, who we just, the other Jill in my life, who we just spent 24, just celebrated 24 years of marriage. So that's kind of rad. But then like a few minutes later, I met this really cool girl named Tina, who's a naturopath, who also worked at a health food store before, during, and after naturopathy school. And then she became a DO. And that was literally like my first week at DO school was where I found out what a naturopath was. I was like,
yep.
I met Jill, and now I know Jill the naturopath, so we're in good shape.
I didn't realize that. How have we not talked about that in your story? In all the hours we've spent jabbering, I didn't know that you had this big accident.
Well, what's really crazy, and is we had a group with the Wilderness Medical Society, and we're just going hiking in the White Mountains. So we were all just, at the last minute, somebody goes, hey, my friends want to come. They're very experienced wilderness leaders. They're no one that we knew, but they were friends of a friend. And we had a couple couples going. And at the time I was going by myself. So I was like, oh, I'll just go. And we didn't all want to go together, because then it'd be this 30 people clogging up the trail. So we just split up, and we went opposite ways and met in the middle and kept going so that we could have a little more space. And we went on a short trip, and this is why I always tell everybody to always bring your water, is they were like, hey, we're just going to go, it's a quarter mile up there, scenic outlook, then we'll walk down. Nobody took anything. It was like, almost 2 hours later, we're nowhere near where we need to be. I'm like hallucinating. I'm so dehydrated. I start drinking out of the water full knowing I could get Giardia. And then when I get back down, I'm like, I can't even carry my backpack. It's so heavy. I don't know what's going on. And I stumble down the mountain for, 6-8 miles down all day hiking. I get to the bottom, I can barely stand up. And then I get home, I'm like, I crash. And then when I finally take my bag apart, they had put like 50 pounds of rocks in it, because they thought I was joking. Oh, because I was hiding. And I was like, you can't even make that up, Jill. So the thing is, that's where I was like, it's got to be about the leadership. It's like, and even in all the work that you and I do, and this is what really drives me, is I think we want to be as true to the science as we can, and then say when we're being artists, as opposed to what a lot of people in our field do, is say, I know I'm right. But it's almost like, it's kind of like ILADS and the IDSA. One's holding the tail, one's holding the nose of the elephant, and they describe it differently. Well, no kidding. But you're not looking at the whole picture. So I know that's what I really wanted to have this conversation is, because, I've been like this before that. But I mean, boy, if that's not because I'm like, hey, we treat people, we treat their kids. We don't know if they have another chance at this or not, but we know in this life they're suffering. Let's not F around and share with them something else, tell them stuff that's BS. I'm sure you've heard all this stuff. And again, I'm just look at it like, what's the big picture? And what can what's going to help? What do we know the most about? And how's that going to help? What's most likely to help the most number of people? And then we can go to these other things as needed for the unique individual. But not everybody needs to start with I'm not even going to say what I was about to say. One of these fringe treatments that's not only unproven, but doesn't even make any sense, but works in a few people. So it's like, let's look at the science. So that's why I'm so excited about our conversations. We can talk about like medicine, women, and we can also talk about science. And that's a normal sentence. So, I mean, so what got you to this? I mean, and so I appreciate you bringing that out, because I think it really colors, you know, where I come from. And I think a lot of us, so it's like, we care, even if, you know, it's like I always say, like, I love the truth because it's just what we know today, and it might change tomorrow or next week or the week after when we get a new study. So that's awesome, because I'm always learning.
Yeah. And
I don't have to be right. I just do the best I can today.
Right.
So where'd you get to with all this? Because you went to naturopathy school, right? And like, how the hell do you end up being like Jill Crista, ND, breaking the mold from naturopathy school?
Yeah, I also went to shaman school at the same time I was in naturopathic school. So it was an interesting interweaving of the things I probably did in other lives and came into this with some gifts on, you know. So yeah, and then I ended up in Wisconsin to be near where my family had moved to, my extended family, and found out, you know, I'm in Lyme country. When you look at the Lyme stats, Wisconsin's like number 3 some years, number 5. You know, we're always in the top 5 of incidents of the states in the nation. And that has to do with, you know, migratory birds. It has to do with deer, all of the things.
Right.
And I didn't know I was moving to Lyme country. I ended up here thinking I was going to be in, you know, just a family doc, just doing primary care. But I'm also eternally curious, and I'm a digger. And so with these patients that didn't get better, and that, you know, the option was go on a suppressive medication or go to psych therapy because it's all in your head, you know, I'm like, it can't be, because I know the body to be incredibly wise. That's what I loved about my education. I know in DO school, same thing. Like, you trust that it's doing the best it can at all times. And what is the morbid influence in the way of that body being able to find homeostasis, being able to find health and vitality, even better than homeostasis, finding health and vitality. And, you know, the more I dug, the more I was like, this is Lyme. And I know nothing about this other than it can cause a rash and knee pain, swollen knees, you know. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is so much more. So then I went and did the ILADS physician training, and turns out when you find and treat the cause, people tend to get better. How about that? But then it was like, some of these people were doing all the right things, even with integrative medicine. You know, ILADS for a while was very drug heavy, you know, antibiotics. I still have my naturopathic training, so I was weaving in the herbs and the antibiotics. And so I had this huge toolbox, and there was people that just still weren't getting better. And I was like, I don't know, I'll keep digging, you know, because that's the kind of practitioner I am. And in one of those patients, the way that Providence works, you know, God will say, time for you to learn the next layer. And so you can help more people. And in their basement, they found toxic black mold in a remodel. They weren't even like remediating. They were just remodeling. And when they uncovered everything, it was like, that was a 10 to 12 year estimated by the contractors exposure.
Oh, wow.
Previous remodel. And I was like, this guy doesn't have Lyme. He has mold. Because I was like, I don't really understand what mold does, so I'll just go hit the research. So I hit PubMed, and that's how I found Lyme. You know, I was like, there's this thing, it's neurological. It's, you know, Lyme is way more than just a knee. So, you know, cardiac, neurological, all the things that. So when I hit PubMed, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been missing mold. And I think so many people are, because the problem with research is that if we know something is a toxin, we can't set up a study to purposefully poison people to figure out how to get them better. Because if it's a toxin-based illness, the treatment is to not have the toxin exposure. So we had no human studies. We have no randomized clinical control trials about, if someone is breathing in ochratoxin, what do we treat them with? Because the treatment is, don't breathe ochratoxin. And so we can't even recruit for these studies because of medical ethics, thankfully. But these are things
Right.
like ochratoxin, a known human carcinogen, aflatoxin, a known human carcinogen, patulin, same thing. Like patulin's so good at killing cells that they tried to use it for chemo, but it was too toxic. And this is what people are breathing in their homes. So
Yeah.
I was sitting there with all of this animal research going, okay, well, if they're giving animals turmeric, I know about the right dose for a human to use. And so here I was in clinic doing translational studies, translational medicine, basically.
Right.
That's how I ended up becoming the mold lady, because I couldn't get my nose out of PubMed, and I had a comfort level with these very effective treatments they were using on animals. So I could just start people on these treatments.
Using them.
Mm-hmm.
That's so incredible. Like, yeah, I always say, like, even I think about mycophenolic acid, I'm like, we make, kidney transplant anti-rejection meds out of mycophenolate. So you're like, whoa, this stuff is really bad. And why did it take until, I remember getting started. I remember my first, lecture about SIRS, my first lecture about nasosinus biofilms, and this is not that long ago. When I got started, nobody was talking about anything other than aspergillosis, or if you happen to have like a pond of Stachybotrys in your house, don't swim in it,
Right.
So.
Yeah, and it was just this little, almost like a passion project. And in the Lyme world, people are so desperate and they're so connected. There's this really amazing community. So then it was like, hey, I just got better. She was treating me for mold and Lyme. And so then it was, the people traveling from all over the world trying to see me for mold because they had chronic Lyme and maybe it was mold. And that's people who knew they had mold exposure. That's rare. A lot of people are.
It is.
Well, no idea.
And it's almost amazing people are open to it, to be honest, because at least in the chronic Lyme community, so many people are like, hey, I've got Lyme and my Bartonella or my Lyme is acting up. And it's like, it's all about the identity, because they're gaslit by the conventional system. And then they come to the Lyme literate community, and everybody disagrees, but we sort of do things semi-similarly. Mm-hmm. And but it doesn't always work when you have more than one toxin, and especially if you're using antibiotics or herbs, but at least herbs, you have a chance of overlap by accident,
Right. Oh, I love that term. I love that, overlap by accident. That's great.
Well, it's you see a bunch of kids too. It's like they don't take that much. I have to make a really tight treatment protocol. And sometimes we have to choose not to treat mold or not to treat Lyme at a certain particular time. And some people they're like, I can only treat one thing. And then other people are like, I got to treat it all at once. I'm like, well, you're talking to two of the most expert physicians in the world. So maybe you just want to see what we have to say about it.
I want to just treat your body, not your lab test, just all that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So I usually kind of think about this more towards the end of a topic, but what do people really need to know about mold? If you were to just cut to the chase and say, let's stop talking about baloney here. Let's go, what are the top couple of things that if you could get everyone on the planet to know about mold would actually make a difference?
Okay, people are not going to like this.
Please, I am so excited to hear that.
I just got to preface it. There is something you are not addressing. There is something you are not addressing. Because what is mold's job on the planet? It is to take previously living organic material and compost it into tiny little nutrients, then the forest floor can recycle and use for nutrition. There is something you are not addressing. And mold comes in and says, I'm good at cleaning up garbage. I'm actually so good at it, I'll break it down into little parts and pieces, and then it could be useful to you, or it could be useful to the field, so to speak. So that is, I think, the biggest thing I want people to understand. And it's a little tricky because it can sound like I'm blaming you, and that's not the case. If you have it happening, it's a message. And that's the whole point, is to stop and say, what am I not addressing? When it happened in our home, we had just a massive grief in our family. My kids were sick. We had no time to, deal with the grief and whatever. Moved into a moldy home. And it was like the mold said, I can do grief. I
gotta
can
work on this.
Yep, I can start working on it. And actually, I'll make you so distracted and chaotic and have to spend all this money on your remediation and know the, people you got to call and remediate and blah, 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 blah. You'll be so distracted from your grief. I'll help. You won't even have to deal with it. So the second thing is that mold is a supreme intelligence on the planet. And if you are it's mushrooms, if you're disconnected from nature, it's going to win. It's so connected, and it's a supreme intelligence because it's connected. And when mold moves into a home, it becomes disconnected from nature and acting out of character, just like humans do when we're not connected to nature. But because it is so recently connected to nature, it can force you onto its coherence much easier than you can vibe it out of your coherence. So I have a guided visualization that is completely free. It's on my website. It's called the Clarity Pep Talk. And it is all about, I jokingly call it the Breakup with Mold guided visualization. And it's all about tuning your frequency, just like you would a radio dial, to get off of mold's channel. Because I'm sure you see this a lot too. The family that lived in mold, the insurance said, okay, we'll remediate, we'll put you up in a hotel. Hotel room is moldy. They do the remediation failed, or it was insufficient. It's like they can't get away from mold. They decide, well, it was remediation enough. We're going to sell the house. We're going to move into a new, clean, fresh start. That house is moldy. This is what I'm talking about. You get on a coherence with mold. And if you aren't purposefully moving off of it, and that includes doctors treating mold. If you're treating mold a lot and you're not adjusting your frequency to stay off the coherence, I listened to this guided visualization for myself. I made it for me first. I went out in my backyard and I was like, okay, I know that when, in shamanism, when we're extracting something that is no longer useful for the body, a lot of times it needs percussive or rattle. That's why we have a drum or a rattle, or, like a lomi massage, they smack you around, it's like, we're going to get this out of your body. Or in Qigong, you shake, so there's something that rattles. And a couple summers ago, we had this weird leak that happened in my house. And I was like, either I am a mermaid and water wants to follow me everywhere, or I'm not addressing my energy enough.
There's something's energy. So I went out in my backyard. It was middle of summer in Wisconsin, and the cicadas are amazing. They're just louder than loud. I mean, you feel like you're in a jet engine, and they're out there just just doing this rattle. And I turn around and I'm like, hey, would you guys help me make a guided visualization? And they agreed. And so they're a big part of the healing of it, is this shaky medicine that will help rattle you out of your coherence. And there's just like magical medicine in this recording. It's so cool. That's amazing. It's crazy that, one I was going to say is, I'll definitely make sure we link to that in the show notes and make sure everybody knows where to connect with you in general, but also specifically for that. But it's weird to me that we have to say it's only 11 minutes. Because if it's like, we will spend hours telling our doctors how they did it wrong, or they don't know what they're doing, and bring in all these papers of all this internet research we've done. But how much of what the doctors asked you to do to switch has actually been done? And why is Dr. Crista saying, hey, by the way, it's only 11 minutes. I'm like, to me, I always say, like, hey, when the universe gives you 1%, when source and love give you 1% healing, and you say it's not enough because you want 20 or 40 or 80%, do you really think it'll trust you? Like, nature and the world is, the universe is intelligent, and we're all part of it. So why don't we just say, thank you so very much for this very small victory, because that small victory is going to help move your frequency. And, some of us can't handle a 10% jump. Others could, but right? And it's interesting as you're talking about that. I'm thinking about all the mindset training. You know, I spent time with Mary Morrissey and Bob Proctor and all these other people. I've got all these coaching certifications to basically help my patients figure out how to do what they want, what they say they want. But it's like, why are we labeling ourselves moldies, labeling ourselves Lymies, and then people are just like, you'll see these people, they can't get rid of the Lyme or the Babesia, right? And they're better, but they relapse. And other people are better and they've done the work and they move on because they've switched their frequency. And to see with mold, I remember the first time you said that to me, and I actually didn't even think of that when I was prepping, you know, asking you that question, but that mold is decomposing. And the thing I love about it, and this is, I would say this for anything in your life, because recently I had a few big changes that I didn't want, right? And I just reframed them immediately that they were really good. Yeah. And they were opportunities to learn from the past part that didn't go as well as I wanted, and that it was going to help me, you know, redo this whole thing in a much better way. And because it was already there, so I framed it. But what I love about the decomposing part of mold is that it really is about recycling. It's not about getting rid of something at all. It's about releasing the nutrients and the energy so that they can be expressed in a new, possibly more creative, different way. And so it's a change. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's so profound what you said about how I'm emphasizing, you know, it's only 11 minutes, you know, like how much time does anyone spend doom scrolling, trying to find proof of why they're so sick and those kinds of things? You know, it's like, that's, it can be a habit, and it is really, it's important to realize we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control what we do about it, how we feel. And it's the feels, like you were saying, like you reframed it. I'll bet first though, you really felt and embodied all of the emotions that went with the disappointment or the frustration or the anger or the sadness or the whatever that brought up. And I feel like that's a lot of what mold is helping, is this is emotional decomposing. You know? Yeah. And you've got to feel the feels.
Well, and that's the thing, like I just, you know, going down this shaman route a little bit, I just remember working with some Peruvian shamans, and we were talking about trauma, because everybody from the, you know, the developed world seems to love the word trauma for whatever reason. And I mean, I get it. Some people have some very significant trauma, and many people have trauma. But what I really like is when they talk about positive, and I would love to hear what you're feeling about this, but they talk about positive and negative as poles, not as a value judgment, not as good or bad, just as literally the poles of a magnet. And then what they told me was trauma is negative energy that's stuck in the body. And it's not that it's negative pole, but it's the lack of finishing its path through you and being released. It's just that it's stuck. And I feel like that's what you're saying about mold. It's actually giving you the opportunity to complete a path of one path to allow the other path to emerge.
Yeah, you know how many families, and I don't know if you hear this, but they'll say, "Oh, you know, we kind of want to whisper this so it never happens again." But it was one of the best things that could have happened to our family, because we prioritized what was really important. We got rid of clutter. We were spending all of our time managing our stuff instead of going for a hike. You know, and all of this, just these little things in retrospect that they're like, and that's not every family, obviously. I mean, I still have a very, very sick kid. So, you know, I get it. You know, I have a kid who's real fragile because of our mold exposure. But many times they will say that experience was what amalgamated us into the beings that we are. And, you know, I mean, when you're right in the middle of it, you hear that, you want to punch me in the face, probably. And that's fair. That's real. Have that emotion, have that reaction. I'm talking about the people who are on the way other side of it and are able to look back and say, how did that serve us? Because everything really is for us. I love to have that view of the world, the pronoia versus paranoia. Pronoia is you're assuming that the universe is always working for you. Yeah, even though it can seem like not, because angels work in very weird ways sometimes.
Well, and it's like I'm paraphrasing Bob Proctor a little bit here, and he paraphrased a lot of people, so he might have borrowed it from someone else, but I heard it from him. But it's like the challenge. First of all, he said the law of attraction is a secondary law, not primary. The primary law is the law of vibration or frequency, which I resonate with quite a bit. And that's a really poor choice of words, but anyway. I resonate with that frequency. But the thing that was always so interesting to me was he's like, the challenge with applying any of these universal laws is you need to have faith. And you need to have faith that it will show up, so much so that that it will show that with such definitiveness, because your pronoia is so high, that you will jump knowing that it will show up the millisecond before you need it. And the universe may not give it to you before that. And it's a bit extreme, and I'm not saying do anything stupid, but you have to have this faith that's so just about, you have to believe in things other people don't see or believe in for miracles to happen. And so the easiest way to do that I know of is start to focus on what the hell you want. Like in my story with Lyme, I mean, I got found staring at a computer screen, drooling all over myself. And then I had this 6-year journey of everybody telling me I had something wrong with me that wasn't treatable. And it was just all in my head. I'm like, but it wasn't all in my head like 3 months ago before I got that tick bite. And so ultimately I was staring at a wall again in my apartment during medical school. And I was just like, that path over there, I keep doing this every single day. Every single day I go down this path. I know exactly what it is, and I'm losing not the health battle, but I'm losing what I want in my life. I'm losing my passion. I'm losing my goals. I'm like recently married, got a dog, love playing outside, hiking, biking, skiing, the whole 9 yards, want to have a family, go play outside. So I'm just like, I see a path over there. I don't even know how to get there, but all I know is that I get this every day. I want that, and that's what lights me up. So I focused on that, and within 2 days, somebody gave me a yoga DVD that led me to meet the people who helped me learn how to slowly move my body and start healing. And there's another 6.5 years, but it was like, right. I just said in the middle of it, I'm not waiting for the end. I'm pissed off. I hate the way it feels. But it's more important to me that I get what I want out of life, because I'm already getting the shit show every single day. And so I'm just like, why don't I try something different on for side? And then I learned all of this stuff, especially with Bob and a few other people, that you can just rewrite your script. And then for a lot of you who've had shitty relationships with your parents, I was at a conference, and all day, one time I realized that there was one time in high school where my old man showed up for me 100% the way the little boy wanted in his heart. But because there was so much trauma around it, I couldn't accept it. I couldn't even feel it or see it other than F you, don't act that way. But in the end, when my dad had been dead for 3 years and I'm in my 40s, I was like, oh my God, I get it. But the cool part is you can rewrite the entire timeline. And I changed my entire relationship with my father. It's now better than ever. But man, the person you're letting off the hook isn't the person who wronged you or the infection. It's you, so that you can free up your immune system to do its job. At least that's my feeling behind it. I always tell people, have you loved your Lyme today?
Have you loved your Lyme today?
Seriously, you're talking about vibration. Like if it's so, if you're so pissed, negativity in the way we express it emotionally tends to be contractive. So if I contract around Lyme or mold or Bartonella, where does it go? Nowhere. It has no space. So if I love my Lyme, it's wide open, and my frequency is so high that pathogen is not even able to stay. And I'm just like, you leave me a sticky on the way out the door with the lesson I'm supposed to learn, and don't let the door kick you in the butt on the way out. But thanks for what you taught me. See you later. But I love you. But I don't have to like you.
Right. Well, it's almost like you turned your anger, because anger is a very productive emotion. I'm a big fan of anger, actually. It is. I mean, if you've got anything you have been putting off or not taking care of yourself, because I feel like the biggest frequency behind all of it is self-worth. You have to feel worthy that the universe is actually caring that you exist and that it actually wants something good for you, But if a lot of people will put off what's good for them, do people pleasing or, whatever, and then they get angry on the inside, but they're angry at themselves. And it sounds like what you did is like you were so pissed off, you turned it to, you almost like transmuted into love. Like, what do I love? I'm going to focus on, and that's the saying, right? What you appreciate appreciates.
100%. Well, the other thing too, I think of a lot is like a lot of anger requires energy. Mm-hmm. Now, most of us have anger, but I mean, if you like look at how my wife gets angry versus the way I get angry, it's like a complete, you would never even know she was angry, except you're like, oh
that's
shit.
That's women's too. That's because we've got this whole womb thing. We can store it.
Yeah, you can hold on to it. But I'm like, some people have a lot of energy, but I find that a lot of the shutdown and the freeze state is just like, it's all in the same continuum. So whether we see anger or fight, flight, freeze or whatever words, it's just varying degrees of this thing. And I mean, like in your experience, I mean, do you feel like the emotional aspects of these infections and these exposures, toxins in our body, is it more like the sort of the brain and biochemical effect of the toxin, or is it just like your emotional state coming into it? Like your emotional response to it.
For everybody. I think it's very different for everyone. There are people that it is literally the neuroinflammation, like they started healthy. I mean, we see that in pandas and pants, healthy kid.
Exactly.
Running a little low on energy, or maybe, too many sleepovers in a row or whatever, it kind of caught them at a time when their immune system wasn't really up for it, but generally a pretty healthy kid, and whack, So I think it's very, very different for everybody. And that's the challenge for the practitioners. And that's why it's nice to have someone else that you go see, that you don't do this all by yourself, because you need somebody who can reflect that back to you and say, what I'm seeing of the two Venn diagrams here of, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical body, is that this is very heavily a physical thing. And we're going to need to thump you with a lot of chemistry. And for some people, that's going to thump them too hard, because really the thing that's in the way is their mental game or their spiritual, growth or something like that. So it's quite different. Yeah. I don't think there's one way.
Yeah, I would agree, and I just figured it'd be good to see how you feel about it. But I mean, that's part of the challenge of what we do, is we're treating people as unique individuals, and so, is there a way? Well, I guess as a practitioner, is there a way that you protect yourself when you're working with people like this? Because I mean, like you mentioned, you have some personal and family experience with this. And now you have all these people coming to you. And I mean, it can be trying at times to work with people, because we're so empathetic and we care and we want to help them. But are there ways that, you protect yourself as a practitioner, and allow yourself to be able to show up the way that you do in the world, despite, working in something that could be, in and of itself somewhat traumatizing, with the amount of grief we see and the amount of suffering that we try to help alleviate? But
yeah, I mean, to sit with someone in their suffering is a very intense experience. And I don't know where I would be actually without my spiritual practice. I mindfully and purposefully charge my inner light every day. So I am like beaming like a sun. So even if that stuff comes toward me, it just can't even come near. And it's not even a purposeful, like putting up shields or whatever. It's just literally, I am concentrating my light so intensely. I try to, again, burn like the sun, and that I'm becoming, as in shamanism, they describe as becoming the hollow bone. So very little of what I'm doing is actually coming from me. It's coming from, that person's angels or that person's higher self or whatever. I'm just helping them connect in. And I've got a brain that can think of all the things, and I'm very analytical, and all those things are very helpful, but I'm not bringing me to it. I need to reserve my energy for me. That's my stuff, And I also don't want to infuse my stuff in anybody else's experience. I remember a classmate of mine in naturopathic school. We have, when you do clinical trainings, you follow a year ahead of you doctor. And we were going in to see a patient, and I was just the secondary, he was the primary. And he gets to the door and he stops for a moment and he kind of closed his eyes and he blew on his hand, and then he grabbed the door handle and then walked in. And afterwards I said, Evan, what were you doing? He was like, I'm making sure that I don't bring anything into the room that isn't for, the highest good of this person. And I just thought, wow. I need to remember that every single person, you need to clean the slate clear, not only of what's going on in the room, and this is something I'm going to be teaching practitioners, how to manage your therapeutic container, because that was such an important modeling for me, that therapeutic container is the ceremony of the healing. That's where the healing is in the ceremony of it. It's not what you take. It's not the right dose. It's not with or without food. It's not binders or not. The biggest healing is the ceremony that we create and being present.
And before we hopped on and kind of, hit the record button and all this stuff, we were talking, like, one of my, rather than say frustrations, but share what does come to my human mind. But one of my awarenesses is that a lot of people in the Lyme community, if you will, and the mold community, MCAD, whatever, they run away from what you just talked about. And if they do it, it's like, I'm doing vagus retraining, I'm doing amygdala stuff, I'm doing DNRS or primal or whatever. But it's like a freaking religion. And it's like, it becomes like a treatment. And it's almost like when you're talking, like, I always have people like, when you put those pills in your mouth, don't be pissed that you're taking 20 pills 3 times a day. Be so grateful that they're available. Be so grateful that you love yourself so much that you'll introduce healing into your body and make it a sacrament, make it a ceremony. So when you said that, I was like, yes.
Yes.
And the thing that I've noticed is I would love for more of our practitioners to take their, and I'm calling you all out really right now, is you have to lead by example. Take care of yourself first. So when your patient goes, do you really do that yourself? You expect me to do it? Do you do it? I go, yeah. And I can prove it. And I'm human. It's not like Jill or I are perfect, but we have our practice and we do the work and we acknowledge it. Like a friend of mine just today, like, this is like, he's like, oh, is my peptide coming? And he was away and I didn't want it to come when he wasn't there. And then I got busy and I forgot and I ordered it, and the pharmacy takes longer than anybody wants. And so he's waiting an extra week. And I just said, hey, they have a 2-week lead time and I sent it in too late. It's my fault. I'm sorry. And it's like, and he's like, oh, it's all cool. I just want to get it. It's like, but it's just like, hey, it's okay. I'm a human being. I made a mistake, but it's like, I just own it and I don't make it up in anything other than it was. I forgot about it. And now it's fixed. Like,
right.
But we have to do that self-care work. Like,
yeah. And like you could have spent so much time assuming what his reaction was going to be, and it would have squandered so much of your energy. And instead you're like, well, I'm just going to say what really happened. Like, yeah, I think Mark Twain has a saying like that, like, tell the truth, it'll astonish others, but also then you don't have to remember, you don't have to keep it all in your mind. Yeah. Just always tell the truth.
Yeah, and it's like,
I also astonish others or something is, very Mark Twain.
It's so awesome. I mean, one of the things that you remind me of too is I always try to tell people, like, especially practitioners, like, figure out what you want your life to look like, and then figure out what that little thing is that your big gift to the world from the medical perspective, and then start to figure out who the people you want to serve are. And you're not here to serve everybody, right? In fact, when I stopped serving everybody, my life got a lot better and I helped a lot more people. And then you can start to do the nuts and bolts of how to run your practice. But we have, like, the way our team is trained to relate to our staff, to our patients, is in a way that sets great ground rules for them so that they're not questioning what we're doing. They're following through as best they can. And it's also a representation of all those things that are life-giving to me. And so when everybody asks what I should do, I'm like, I had an osteopathic mentor who said, because we could do a direct treatment, like into the tension to push past it, like if somebody cracked your neck. And then there's other things where you loosen things up and you let the system unwind or whatever, direct and indirect. And people are like, well, which way do you go? It's almost like your answer to that question earlier. Well, it depends. Everybody's different. And he just said, you go in the direction that's most lifeful.
Nice.
So when you're doing your testing, whether it's energetic or Quest or whatever, when you're sitting there with your gestalt and your gut reaction to things, like and this works in parenting and relationships and what you're going to cook for dinner, as well as, working with patients, or being a patient or a caregiver, is like, what feels right? Like what vibrates at the level that you want to be at. And if one's down here and one's up here, well, I know which one I'm probably going to choose, even if it's wrapped in a different way, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's the down there because you need to cry and you've got pent up emotions. And that's okay. Like that what you're saying about the Peruvian shaman, it's just polarity. It's not duality. And I love that we're moving away from that word duality to polarity. I'm so non-judgmental about whatever is going down. Again, like if somebody has decided they're going to go all the way down to I know I probably could watch comedy and improve my mood, but I actually have some pent up tears I need to access. So I'm going to listen to some really sad music and then hopefully let yourself go all that way and release, instead of sad music and then you get depressed and you send a nasty text to somebody or whatever. It's like, keep it as what that was. That was it. Your attempt to find healing ceremony with yourself, So
and what I've learned from healing ceremonies is like, they go the way they're going to go. And whatever the medicine you use, whatever that may be, which could just be simply sitting with your tears and your emotions, all the way through, breathwork ceremonies and psychedelics or whatever it is, or church or a retreat, whatever the medicine's not going to give you anything that you can't handle, but it's also going to give you what you need in a way that might not be what you want.
Right.
And then it's your job is to just almost like you were saying, like be present, be the container and let it happen and observe it and then do the work you need to do. I mean, I did so much work that had nothing to do from the outside, had nothing to do directly with healing infections. But it's like in osteopathic school, we've been saying body, mind, and spirit since the 1850s. And it was not meant that the body is three parts. Dr. Still said the body has a triune nature. So it's things we can talk about. And he was saying, don't forget about the spiritual side of you, but it completely is inseparable from the physical being.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they're absolutely intertwined. They're not separate things. But most of medicine is just focusing on the body part. Suppress the mind and despirit the spirit.
Right.
Disempower you, not, so people feel like they almost they have an intercessor between healing and themselves and where they are and the healed self.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I was like, we should probably talk about some nuts and bolts for people too. And we were planning to talk about this at the end, but I'm so happy to lead with it because this is how you actually heal.
How to actually heal. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and part of it is, I mean, I don't think of healing as like the nuts and bolts of medicine being separate from what we just talked about. In fact, I think what we just talked about should be the starting point of all education and all experience. Because like I have to just remember it. I have to change a meeting tomorrow because friends of ours for her birthday wants to go camping. And so like a whole bunch of us, including my whole family, we're just going out camping and we're just going to, unplug from everything and spend time with our friends. We might have a little music so we can have a little dance circle, because as we were talking earlier, like we like moving and it's like, but other than that, it's just going to be time in nature with the dogs and your friends and talking and a fire. And it's like so great to clear your calendar for a couple of days and just commune with life.
Yeah.
And then you realize that mycelium are like interconnected throughout the whole planet too.
Yeah.
So this mold thing is not like a bad thing.
Right. It just acts unnaturally once it comes inside. And
Yeah.
how did you heal the fear of the outdoors part with Lyme? With your Lyme? Did you ever run into that of like
I don't know if it was anger or ego or just my New Jersey FU. I was just like, I'm doing that. Because like I feel alive, and that's my litmus test. I'm going to treat everybody that I know like the way I would treat my loved family member. I'm not going to give you any medical advice that I wouldn't do in my own household. And I'm going to do what I love doing, and I'm going to follow my heart. And it's not going to be like the subjective, like, oh, I want to, I'm going to get a Lamborghini at all costs. But I'm like, when I'm truly in touch with who I am, I mean, I could sit on the ground outside for days and not have to, I'm just like, I just love plugging into that energy. So, I mean, are you cool outside, or what do you tell people when you run across that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of my Lyme patients struggle with it. That, I got the tick outside, and so I could get this sick again if I go camping or if I sit around the fire, and it just would go hiking. I mean, I had one woman who was just reading a book in her backyard and a tick dropped out of the tree and on her head. I mean, it's just those kinds of things, and you can become very fearful of the very medicine that nature provides, and I just wondered if you had a tip or a trick or something that you do to work with patients on that.
As you asked that, Jill, it's really interesting. I was getting bit by ticks all the time until I got Lyme and I did the work, and I haven't been bitten by ticks since.
Interesting.
Even before I moved to a place where there's very few ticks, but that was because I want to play outside in in the mountains, not because I was running away from ticks. Because I played in Tick Central in Connecticut outside all the time, and it was like I increased my vibration. And sometimes when I'm talking to people, I'm like, I think it was partly I changed my diet and I increased the frequency of health in my body. But ultimately it was like, I don't feel bad about Lyme. I'm not mad at it. Like, that's why, like, I love it. It's here. Like, I don't understand. Like, I understand why like mold is here more than I understand why ticks are here. But as an ecologist in my original training, I do understand it. But I just don't. It's almost like Krishnamurti, who is like, one of these philosophers like out of England and India and stuff. And he was like supposed to be this head of this whole thing, and he didn't want to do it. And so everybody followed him anyway. And they're following him forever. And they're like, what? After 25 years, he's like at this big conference, and he goes, there's like, a zillion people. And he's like, I know you guys have been following me, some of you for many decades, and you all want to know like my secret. And he goes, so I'm going to tell you today. And He sits back and he goes, I don't care what happens. Wow. I didn't mean it like, he's like, literally, whatever happens, I'm going to stay equanimous and just deal with it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to love everything. I don't have to like everything, but I'm going to love it.
Right.
And I was like, damn, bro.
That's empowerment, right? That's like, talk about flow.
Right. Yeah. So like, one of the things that gets in the way, because I do want to touch on it if it's okay with you, and we can always wrap back to more of this flow and other things, but like one of the things that messes with the flow of practitioners moving forward with this is like, okay, the person comes in, they have all the things that that look like mold. They go through the symptom checklist and everything. And it's like, they might even have a mold exposure, but what the heck do you do for testing? And I mean, because it's like I know there are folks in our training program, and a lot of our listeners are going to be like, okay, this is all great what you're talking about, but the second I talk about what to do, I can't even think about that or feel any of that because my brain goes, going back to like when we talk, the beauty is it doesn't even matter if we agree with each other. We both just say what's on our mind and we have a friendly conversation about it. So I know that we're having a legit conversation, but there's so much baloney out there. I mean, like, what's kind of the state of things so that we can ease a little of the practitioner and patient sort of anxiety from the medical side of things of not actually knowing what to do at this point?
Yeah. So the big picture is the testing for mold is wanting. So there is no thing that we can say definitively, I did this and this proves this diagnosis. So that's, first of all, just know that's the playing field. That the testing just like with Lyme and co-infections, it is needing improvement. It has its limitations. We know what some of them are, and there are things you can do to reduce the limitations. So there's strengths and weaknesses in everything that we do with testing. So what are the limitations? Some of these tests are excretion-based tests. So it's going to depend on the person's ability to excrete. Some of them, like the MyMycoLab, is an antibody-based test. And if the person's has Lyme and certain mycotoxins, they have antibody depletion. So that may not be the best test for them. And so the idea is that detach from the idea that there is a single perfect test. So I get this question all the time. What's your favorite test for mold? And I always say, that's the wrong question. So
I'll leave you to that.
Question. What is the question you should be asking? The question you should be asking is, what is the best cluster of things that I could test to answer the question we're asking about this patient for the patient in front of me with the condition that they're in? So it's far more complicated. And I have done more split sample testing than anyone on the planet. I do, on the same day, I'll do urine testing and we'll split the sample. I'll do the blood test. I'll do a visual contrast sensitivity. We'll do a mold allergy test. So we can look at the whole thing and see how the different methods show us different things. And I also have identical twins. And so when we were in our moldy house, my twins we have kind of a wicked sense of humor. And they're like, yeah, my mom's like Hitler. She was just testing on twins all the time. I was like, oh my gosh, guys.
Love it.
Yeah. So, one of them was good about taking glutathione. One of them wasn't. Turns out same house, same diet, same genetics, very different lab tests. So I was like, okay, wow. I'm learning. And then I have a friend who has identical twins. So I was like, will you be my control? And then they had mold in their house. And so it's just been like this huge sample set. And we need more. We need more of that. That's all just out of my pocket. And so we need labs to take responsibility. So that's the other thing, is also realize functional labs get scrutiny for a reason. When I presented this data to the lab at their education, rather than going and doing their own testing, they just took my little bit of my presentation and made it the new rule for their lab. And that was very disappointing. I lost a lot of respect for that lab. They should be doing all of this. We do it for regular labs. Like, we know that vitamin C, if you're taking it orally, is going to mess up a glucose P test. That's how you do real medicine. You find out the things that can modify a test. So I really want all of us as practitioners and patients, please put pressure on these labs to do the due diligence. How much does diet make a difference? Which foods make the difference? We know that there is a 48-hour washout period for most mycotoxins in the urine. So I put patients on a low mycotoxin diet for 3 days. We know that binders are going to bind some of the mycotoxins. So if you're testing to see what their body burden is, take them off a binder. So for the urine mycotoxin testing, I have a urine mycotoxin test prep sheet that's on my website. If you just go to the bottom in the handouts, and I update that regularly with the foods that I have my patients go off of that are going to possibly skew the test because they could be eating them and then excreting them in their urine. So we know dietary contamination can happen, so let's reduce that limitation. It just makes scientific sense.
Right. So you're nice. You only do 3 days. I do like 7. So with the diet.
Oh yeah. No, you don't have to. No, it's a 48 hour.
I don't have to. I'm just like, I'm trying to get them to change their diet too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, maybe not all that junk that you're eating.
You need to do a 75-day, mycotoxins prep. Collect it on day 4, but keep going afterwards. I'll tell you why later.
Yeah, and then there's not this, so anyway, the question that we're often trying to answer, the most important question we're trying to answer, which governs which cluster of tests we would do, is my patient in mold right now? Because as a practitioner, you're about to ask them to spend money, real money, on inspectors, good inspectors, hopefully, testing of their home. It's easier actually to test a home than a body. The body can accumulate and hide it, just like with Lyme. So it is easier to test like even one member of the family with this cluster, so that you can say, okay, something's going on in the house, now spend the rest of the money on testing the house, because houses only get mold in certain ways, and they don't like you can do tissue samples of a house that you can't do of a body, you know? So mycotoxins can bioaccumulate in a house. Of course, they can soak into those, you know, different drywall and that kind of thing, but you can take a sample of drywall. That doesn't require any stitches or anything. So
doesn't hurt.
That's the body
much.
Or the house. So the question is, my patient in mold right now, there are a few indicator things that we can look at. If they have a bad VCS or visual contrast sensitivity, that's one mark. If they have urine MPA or mycophenolic acid, you brought that up before, that's another mark. Why is that one? It's water soluble, so it's easier for the body to excrete, even if you're a crappy excreter, and it's only made when mold is actively living. So mycotoxins, where there's mold, there's MPA, if it's living, but not necessarily mycotoxins, because mold won't make mycotoxins unless it's in competition. So if you have a happy colony of mold, you could still be way mold sick and have absolutely no mycotoxins. That's wild. The other mark, the third mark we look for is a blood IgE antibody reaction to mycotoxins. IgE will raise if you have been in mold in a significant amount for the previous 2 weeks. And then the fourth mark is a mold allergy test. Regular old LabCorp Quest. Nobody should be allergic to mold. It's natural. So if someone's allergic to mold, their bucket is full of spores. And why is that the case? So now, does a mold allergy test say that someone is in mold all the time? No. That's why we look at a cluster. So when we put all of those together, if 3 out of 4 of those are positive or bad, so positive means bad in medicine, which is always weird, we say it that way, that's a really high, and they have a questionnaire score of 10 or above on my questionnaire. Based on the research that Neil, Nathan, and I are doing, a 10 or above is a positive predictive value that they're mold sick. So a 10 or above questionnaire, 3 or 4 of those marks, I feel very confident then saying you need to spend money on a good inspector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have a person, and again, I love you talking about the clusters. Everybody's like, I had somebody the other day even just like, well, so is it Lyme? And I'm like, we just had like a 45-minute discussion, just like you just said. I'm like, well, there's all these factors, and all I know is it's you and how you're feeling, and we're going to work on, you know, narrowing it down. But today I can't tell you, and anybody who thinks they can is lying to you based on the science we have today.
Yep.
Let's get some testing. Let's narrow this down. Now I have my clinical suspicions. But sometimes we need to do these tests and stuff. And one of the questions I get, I mean, I think a lot of us have people come who are pretty sure they have a tick-borne illness, or they're pretty sure that they have mold exposure. And, you know, I mean, we have a very educated patient population frequently.
Yes.
And sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it's a little bit like they've read a lot, but they don't have the training to kind of plug it into this bigger picture that you were talking about, like, because you don't have the experience, and it's hard to be objective on yourself. But does everybody who has like a positive, like if you had a positive urine for mycotoxins test, you know, and often like people working with me, like, hey, they've started to do tick-borne illness stuff, and we're like, and I'm like, well, the reason you're probably not getting better might be mold. But other people are like, they're getting way better, and they're like essentially fine after, you know, tick-borne illness treatment, but they got a positive mold test. And so if you have somebody who's got a positive mold test, do you always treat it?
I love
Don't you love our questions?
So the first thing is, did they do the test right? So if they have a positive mold test and they weren't following a low mycotoxin diet, is that from their diet or was that from their house? So, you know, again, let's assume it was a well done sample.
Yeah, let's call it a true positive for sake of discussion.
Positive, exactly, because that's the other thing we learned, is that glutathione can cause false positives. It can over-report the ELISA. So is that really mycotoxins causing problems for them, or is it just we pulled some body storage out? So let's call it a true positive. I always do something for getting mycotoxins out of their body because we know they're carcinogenic. We know that they can rewire the genes of the immune system. We know they have epigenetic effects on the immune system. And so by leaving it in there, I treat to zero. I do treat to zero mycotoxin evidence, because if we're leaving it in there, we're leaving the person exposed to having a worse outcome from whatever it could be. COVID, next tick bite, car accident, TBI, they have a concussion, and you've got all this neuroinflammation. So they're so easy to get out of the body, actually. That's the other thing I'm bringing to this.
Everybody else tells you they're really hard.
That's what I'm bringing to this conversation is we need to let go of that. It's not hard when we are using science. The problem is that we're treating every mold like it's the same thing and every mycotoxin like it's the same molecular structure, and they're not. They are vastly different, and how we detox them is vastly different. So that's the benefit of testing, is we know what one we're dealing with, and we can target the exact excretion route, which for ochratoxin is the kidneys, not the liver. Ochratoxin loves to leave by the kidneys if we let it. Support it. So if we're doing binders, then people are like, oh, ochratoxin's still high. I guess it's just high in everyone. I'm like, no, that's poorly treated ochratoxin.
More cholestyramine, please.
Yeah. So if anyone's curious, I've done a deep dive on every single mycotoxin. If you're a practitioner, that's all in my updates course. And it is, what are the symptoms that go with this mycotoxin? How is it excreted? How can we support that pathway, whether it's a liver pathway or a kidney or gut microbiome? There are probiotics that help degrade mycotoxins. The body will actually, when you breathe it in, if it's a certain mycotoxin like trichothecenes, the body will shunt it through the bloodstream and push it out into the gut, because it knows that the microbiome is better at detoxing them than any other thing in the body. Isn't that cool? Our bodies are so amazing. So if you're not doing something probiotic and you have trichothecenes, you're missing, a huge part of how we could be getting this out. So that's the detailed sheets are for practitioners in my updates course, but for regular people, if you go to my website, drcrista.com/ enter the name of the mycotoxin. I didn't spell out mycophenolic acid, I did MPA. So /aflatoxin, /ochratoxin, /MPA. There's a whole fact sheet, symptom list, like how you get it out of the body, what I'm using with my patients. All of that is on that downloadable PDF.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is so amazing to share all of that too. So do you, going to symptom complexes, one of the things that a lot of people run into is the state of New York. I don't know if you run into this, where you can't get some of these simple blood tests that we should. Do you just, my answer to these kind of things is like always just you do the best you can with what you've got, and then you're a clinician. But are there any particular like workaround tests if you can't get like a urine MPA, or just kind of get as much as you can? Because everybody can do a VCS, right? Because they're just online these days.
Yeah. And VCStest.com is really nice because they calibrate your screen before they do it. So it's really great. That's why I have the questionnaire. That's why we're doing the research study. Just like Dr. Horowitz has validated his questionnaire. We are midstream right now in our research study. We've done preliminary data analysis, and that's how I know that the 5 or above is going to be a good screening tool of like, ooh, it might be mold if you're above 5 on that questionnaire. If you're 10 or above, there's a very strong
slam dunk.
Very positive predictive value that this is a mold situation. Yeah. So that's why I'm doing that. So many people can't do the labs. They don't have access.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so good, there's a ton of money in validating questionnaires these days. So I know that it's a labor of love and a lot of other things too.
I was like, oh really? No, I don't think so. Yeah.
I know, right? It's like hemorrhaging your own funds to help the world. But we appreciate what you're doing and Neil's doing, and that's why I love you two working together, because you are so different. Like your hearts are the same. But the way you approach this is so different. one of the things I get asked a lot too, aside from the stuff you just touched on, is, about, oral antifungals, especially like, for those, either botanicals and or pharmaceuticals, because admittedly in my practice, these end up, we end up using a lot of things, but it ends up being later on down the road when they do all this other stuff first and, really optimize binders and excretion and all these other things. And then, the stuff we started off talking about, which is like, my patients are like, Tom, can you stop talking about real healing? I'm like, no, because that's how you actually get better. But if you are kind of, questions that always come up are like, what are we using? How long do we treat them for? I have my canned answer about all this, but I'd love to know kind of like, when you're teaching people or going over it, even with your highly educated patients, how do you kind of guide them through that?
I think I'm understanding your question. And I feel like in the Lyme world, we're not using antifungals soon enough. If we're going to use pharmaceutical antibiotics, that's the force of this high. I often then am like, let's do some pharmaceutical antifungals, because we know that even in a healthy person, we can cause fungal overgrowth when we use these medications. So that's one of my drums I beat a lot, is that we're leading the person to have more. There you go. Boom, boom, boom.
Right behind me.
We're leaving the person open to having more problems with fungal overgrowth, biofilm, all of that, if we're not recognizing that when you put someone on an antibiotic, they need some antifungal help, period. That's even in a healthy person, but especially in a mold sick person. Because in a mold sick person, they have fungal burden. They have fungal overgrowth, maybe candida, maybe rhodotorula, maybe aspergillus, but they need that support. And we've just knocked out all the competition for that fungus when we do antibiotics. And I'm not afraid of antibiotics. I love my antibiotics. Like when I got Lyme last year, got myself on my whole protocol, three big guns, got my antifungals going. And, I don't know that I would have turned around as quickly without those helpers, but I always use plants alongside. And
100%.
I don't always use pharmaceutical antifungals. With, again, force with force. If somebody's on pharmaceutical antibiotics, I tend to use the drugs alongside the plants. But you can get someone completely better with plant-based medicine as well. And for how long, that's going to be very dependent on what else is going on with that patient.
Right.
It can be anywhere from 3 months of oregano. And I do treat noses because that's our first interface. And that becomes, like you asked about how much is the body in the way. A lot of times if there's sinus colonization or involvement, the body is very much in the way, because this creates a barrier to recovery and flow. But it could be 2 years. It depends on what's going on. What do you think? What's your take?
Well, a quick aside to that, because then I know there's another part of this and I can answer that too. But like, one of the things I was thinking is just like, I talk to people, if they always ask, I want the best brain detoxification supplement. And I'm like, sleep.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's not what I wanted to hear. I'm like, well, I just told you the answer to your question that you posed. And then the other one is a patent nasopharynx. Like your nose needs to be open. So I have a lot of people do different types of intermittent hypoxemic treatment or variations on buteyko breathing, because everybody can hold their breath to some degree, and they can learn to do it more, and they can learn to optimize carbon dioxide, which happens to cause vasodilation in the nose. And it's also an amazing anti-anxiety medication that's natural, that you can augment through breathing. Imagine that. And then you pump out more nitric oxide and vasodilate even more, and now your nose is open. It's less hospitable for mycotoxin, or for like fungal biofilms and whatever. And then you have the drainage, and then PANS and PANDAS, we think that at least from the strep perspective, it's recurrent strep leading to our T helper cells going up that are ready for the strep are going up into our brain. And I'm like, what about the mold? I mean, if you have chronic colonization here, the autoimmune encephalitis is happening because your body's never getting a break and your immune system's constantly doing this, which is making more inflammation and getting in the way, essentially. And then all this stuff travels up the nasal lymphatics into the brain, and they wonder why, so I love that you focus. I mean, I focus on the nose a lot too. So, but then, and I mean, I guess like I'll ask you one other piece of the question, then I'll answer the question you asked me, because I wanted to give you a chance to finish the last piece. This is like, a lot of people ask, what dose should you use, right? And obviously there's individuality and all that stuff. However, I find there are a lot of people in the Lyme world, as well as the mold world, if there are even separate worlds, they're just funny ways to speak, because I'm like the Lyme world. I'm like, I get it, but like, we don't need it. Is that a lot of people like to do like more is better. Right. And like, I've been doing a lot of lecturing on babesiosis and tafenoquine, along with botanicals, because there's really sick science behind it. But when you actually read the science, we're probably overdosing people rather than underdosing them. And some people need higher. But it's like, we're starting with the assumption that you need to bring like a nuclear bomb to, a flag football game.
Right.
Or something. So when you talk about like the actual dose that you give someone, whether it's a botanical or a pharmaceutical, I mean, do you have kind of like a general mindset around that, of thinking about it?
I think the big thing with the herbs is that people dose it like it's a pharmaceutical, and that's not how they work. They need a lower dose, dosed more frequently, is more effective than a few big doses. Because they, and big doses, fine, do those more frequently. Either way, do the herbs more frequently. That's where we get this story of like, the herbs don't work. Like, they need to be a minimum of 4 times a day. That is just how they work. They're more like a food, Yeah. So that might be oregano, 500 milligrams 4 times a day. That might be a mix. Like, there's a really nice mix from Integrative Therapeutics called Y Formula. I'll do that one 2 caps 3 times a day, sometimes 4 times a day. But I don't start there. That's a big dose. That's like an itraconazole 200 milligram dose, the equivalent. So I start with
4 times a day, even. Yeah. Like, could you imagine 800 milligrams of itraconazole in a day?
Yeah, right. So, but I mean, a Y formula, if you're taking 2 TID or 3 times a day or 4 times a day, that's an equivalent to a 100 to 200 milligram itraconazole. So that's not where we just jump in. I'll start with holy basil tea sometimes and just see, because I want the lowest effective intervention. And if somebody gets that lift, there's an inner lift that's just like, I just turned the corner. That's all we need. And then we hold there and keep going for a long time. That's the thing. Fungi are tenacious. They're a supreme intelligence on the planet. You're on the coherence with fungus. It takes a long time of treatment, but that doesn't mean we go that aggressively that long. It just means, just like in the Lyme world, if you're doing on, off, intense, ooh, too intense, I got to go off. Okay, I'm going to try again. Intense, ooh, too intense, I got to go off. That's how you grow resistant species. So it's much better if somebody's like, am I really doing anything with 2 cups of holy basil tea? Like,
yes.
Yes. Stick with it. Yeah. So that's kind of my approach, I guess.
And I think that a lot of people just think like, either they come in going, I have to go balls to the wall, or I'm so sensitive I can't touch anything, and it's tough. And I mean, I know that we have to coach people through that and give them what, seems to give them that uplifting, lifeful experience. When you look at, like, we see this with minocycline, especially in autoimmunity cases, but we see it also with itraconazole. There's a sense in some circles that like a brand name is going to be more necessary than like in certain drug, like, you know, the itraconazole brand name or the minocycline brand name, or the two, or a particular manufacturer. I mean, with the the prescription antifungals, do you see that being as big of a deal?
No, it's more
Me
the
neither.
actual drug.
Never seen it.
It's more the
I like them better.
I mean,
what's that?
Yeah, it's more the actual drug and how much resistance there is. Like fluconazole, there's so much drug resistance. If you're not dosing fluconazole with one of the herbs that combats the resistance, you're only going to be like skimming the surface. And I can share like my little tips for how do you know if it's resistance, how do you know if it's biofilm? Because both of those can cause problems. With resistance, you get on the treatment, and it doesn't matter if it's Lyme treatment, Babesia, Bartonella, mold, whatever, and you get this initial improvement, and you're like, oh yeah. And then everything starts to creep up again. And you start doing the question mark of, you know, maybe it's not Lyme. Maybe it's not mold. No, those are the things.
Oh, it is.
It is those things, and they are resistant to your treatment. So you kicked it in the shins, and now they're recovering. They're figuring out these resistance genes that they share. Whereas biofilm, you get on the treatment, you get improved, you get continuous improvement, you get all the way better, and then you start to pull away the treatment and things come back. That's fine. Yep. So it's very simple, actually, when we start to just do the eagle eye view of things. We can manage those things. With resistance, we can either change the drug, but like you said, does it matter if it's brand name or not? No. It matters the pathway that it's using. So if somebody has a really gummed up glucuronidation pathway, a lot of times they have salicylate sensitivity. And I have found that the most sensitive people sometimes need the biggest gun. They need the drug instead of
100%.
You know what I mean? Because they're so burdened by the infection or by the colonization. So if it's using a certain pathway, that could also be part of our decision point. So much less about brand and much more about these kinds of things. Like amphotericin doesn't use glucuronidation pathway. It's a really nice option. If we can get
it's funny because I was going to make a comment and then ask you about amphotericin. It's like one of my favorite substances. It's like, it's so good, you know, and it works very differently. And there's a lot of not systemic side effects. And if there are side effects that you're feeling, it's actually from killing something because it works in your gut primarily. And so you're like limited. It's what?
So start down in the charcoal, you know? Yeah. Don't go off the pharmaceutical, you know? Yeah.
It's so important. And I really appreciate you, like, you know, your back, you know, sort of your experience with that. Cause I think a lot of people are just like, let's go super sensitive or let's go super high. And it's funny. I remember talking to Wayne Anderson years ago, and he's like so well known for like herbs, right? And being a naturopath, and he's one of the original naturopathic, you know, Lyme guru guys. Amazing. And he's like, look, you know, people come in and they think they're going to get herbs from me. I put them on azithromycin and IV ceftriaxone. And it's like, and in my experience, it's like the people who come in swearing they only need herbs and they're only going to do herbs, they need shit tons of antibiotics. And the people are like, I will never do an herb. That shit doesn't work. That's exactly what they need. It's like a great test. I'm like, when they're so convinced of what's going to fix them, it's got to be the other.
Yeah. That's perfect. It's just like with food allergies. You're like, what would you go out in a snowstorm to get if you didn't have it in your house? That's what you're allergic to.
Right? It's right in front of your face. Well, Jill, I mean, we could talk about this forever. I'm looking at the time going, like, you know, I want to be respectful, and I love the fact that we've done all this stuff. One of the things that you brought up, if you don't mind, one other piece, though, that I think that a lot of people ask is like, when the heck do you provoke with glutathione? It's something I forgot to ask you, and I know you're biting your lips going, why is he bringing this up at the end, jerk?
My soapbox.
Yeah, please. Everyone who listens to me knows that I get on my soapbox when there's a soapbox to get on because it's really important. So the soapbox is yours.
Thank you. I'll step up on the soapbox. So like I said, I've done more split sample testing with than anyone I know on the planet. And that is when I learned how glutathione can alter lab tests. And so I actually don't typically, I think it's very rare that I provoke with glutathione at all. The reason being, if we are testing urine, we need to provoke kidney clearance, not liver. If we're using glutathione, we're enhancing liver detoxification, which goes in the bile, which goes in the poop. So if we were doing a stool mycotoxin test, provoking something through the liver makes sense. But since we're doing a urine test, we need things that are going to enhance kidney clearance so that we get more out of the urine. So glutathione also, what I learned with my own twins, I was just saying one was good about taking glutathione, one wasn't. And depending on the method that you're using for urine mycotoxin testing, mass spec is literally a camera looking for a certain shape. And they have it tuned to look for aflatoxin B in its molecular B structure. If you take glutathione, it's going to metabolize that aflatoxin down 4 or 5 more steps, and the camera frame won't recognize it. So you're going to miss. And that's what we discovered with my twins. The guy who was taking glutathione, same exposure, same diet, same genetics, his mycotoxins looked much more normal than the one that wasn't taking glutathione. And as I stopped to think about it, I was like, oh, that actually makes a ton of sense, because now the glutathione has metabolized the mycotoxin, and they have the camera set to look for that one thing. Yeah. So if you're going to provoke, also Dr. Brewer did a really fascinating pre and post sauna. So he did a urine mycotoxin test with a patient. She did a sauna, like a 30-minute, 125, infrared sauna. Then had her collect urine 4 to 6 hours. I can't remember if it was 4 or 6 hours later. And she dumped 10 times more mycotoxins after the sauna. What that taught me is that we have a peak and a trough of excretion after provocation. So if you're doing a sauna the day before at your doctor's office, and then you collect your urine the next morning, we're testing your trough level, which means your lowest amount. Your peak would have happened in the first 4 to 6 hours after your sauna. So right now, the way I'm doing urine testing, which is on that test prep handout, whatever provocation we do, whether it's lymphatic massage, deep tissue massage, sauna, or the way that I do kidney clearance is a product that I've formulated with a light, bioflavonoids. Certain bioflavonoids pull the mycotoxin off the albumin so the kidneys can flush the mycotoxin and hold on to the albumin. So I will do a bioflavonoid bolus and then have the patient collect urine for the next 6 hours. So whatever it is that you're doing for provocation, 6-hour urine collection, stir it up really, really, really good, because some of these are bound to blood proteins, and then send a little aliquot of that to the lab.
Awesome. Mycotoxin testing 101. It's hard because it's like what we knew 6-8 years ago was one thing, or what we thought we knew, then it changed, and we have to update.
Yes, keep updating. None of this is settled science. None of it.
I just remember our first conversation about ochratoxins and, the interstitium of the kidney. And I was like, yay, like now we're talking like science and fun. And like, because this helps people get, and so I just love it. Let's see. In terms of, wrapping things up, we didn't really talk a lot about pandas. If anybody's interested, we'll be linking into your website in the books and everything. I mean, we could talk again about that. I mean, it's like one of my most favorite things to talk about, because I think kids are cool. And we all were once, and we all have a lot of them. So running around the planet and love taking care of that next generation. But I mean, to bring together all the things we've talked about, are there any kind of like, things you want practitioners and other listeners, patients to really take away from, our experience? And, and a lot of times, like, I feel like people their backs are against the wall. They feel like their head's getting stomped against the curb, like just repeatedly. And so like, I always love to give our guests a chance to share some inspiration that people can go home with.
I mean, it kind of goes back to what you said about liking to play outside. Like, get outside. Get outside. It's so important. That's where you clear your head. That's where you get the sun's wisdom. That's where you get a break from your moldy house or whatever. But if you're feeling it really, especially in those despair moments, step outdoors. It's free, and it's very profound. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. It's so important for your everything.
Yes.
And again, like I would say, like one of the most important things is the vibration, the frequency, the resonance. Like, so understand that these things are not bad. They might, like Jill, you were saying, like the mold might be out of place. It might be fine in the woods, but it's in your house now, or it's in your body. So it's not that it's evil. It just needs to move somewhere else. And the easiest way to move it is to move yourself and also be in resonance with your surrounding. And I got to tell you, just to reiterate, like literally, I know of, since I got better and changed my mindset, I've been bitten by a single tick, and it was around the time I was still recovering. So I don't want to lie and say I've never been bit by a tick once I got better, because I was almost all better and I don't remember the exact day, but it was like, I felt it bite me. I could take it off and take some herbs, but nothing happened. But literally from that day forward, I'm like, I always tell people, like with COVID, they're like, I'm like, become the world's worst viral host. For Lyme, become the world's worst bacterial host. Have mold, have the tick look at you, have the virus look at you and go, yeah, I'm going to go over there.
Yeah.
And the number one way that they know, they're not looking at my face, they're feeling me. So go outside, like Jill said, feel the environment, become one with it. Don't be afraid of it. Now, I'm not saying go in the woods and hang out with a jaguar like some people do, like when they're studying to be a shaman. Don't do that unless you're ready to do that.
Yeah.
But, ticks and being outside and, mold, that's not the problem. It's our frequency that's our primary driver there. So I just want to thank you so much, Jill, for sharing all of that, because it's just like resonates so much with my professional experience. And it's so much easier when you're better to tell people what to do, but I lived it, you've lived it, and we have kids who go through different things. So I'm so grateful for you to share your knowledge and through this light of your heart, because I think that's why we all resonate with your message so much, is because it's no bullshit science, but it's also no bullshit love 100% in your face. So always so thankful to see you and chat with you.
Feeling that. And you just fill my heart too. I love our connection so much. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. And until next time, we'll see you next time on the Lyme Insider.